How do you build a dynasty that lasts nearly 3 decades? In 1986, Sir Alex Ferguson took over Manchester United, a club that hadn't won the league in 19 years and was flirting with relegation. 26 years later, he'd won 38 trophies, transformed the club into a global powerhouse, and created the longest sustained period of excellence in modern sports history. What Ferguson mastered wasn't just football tactics. It was the psychology of sustained dominance. He understood something most leaders never figure out: how to evolve continuously while maintaining core principles, how to manage superstar egos without losing control, and how to rebuild successful teams before they decline. Welcome to the highest level. I'm Coach Evan, and I study what separates legendary leaders from everyone else. Today, we're breaking down Sir Alex Ferguson's leadership model, the psychological mastery and relentless adaptation that built the greatest dynasty in sports. By the end of this case study, you'll have 5 proven leadership principles that create sustainable excellence in any competitive environment, whether you're running a Fortune 500 company or leading a high-growth startup. Let's dive in. First, let's understand the magnitude of what Ferguson achieved. 38 major trophies in 26 years, 13 Premier League titles, 5 FA Cups, 2 Champions League victories. But here's what makes this incredible. He did it through constant change. Ferguson rebuilt his team successfully 5 separate times. Most coaches get one great team and try and hold on to it. Ferguson systematically evolved his roster, his tactics, and even his management style while never losing his winning edge. But here's what makes this relevant for business leaders. Ferguson's challenge was identical to what you face. How do you maintain excellence while your industry changes? How do you manage high-performing individuals with massive egos? How do you know when to change a winning formula? This isn't just about sports. This is about the ultimate leadership challenge: creating sustained competitive advantage in a rapidly changing environment. Ferguson mastered this through what the Harvard Business Review called Ferguson's Formula, a systematic approach to psychological leadership that we can break down into 5 core principles. The Sir Alex Ferguson leadership model. Principle 1. Build foundations, not quick fixes. When Ferguson arrived at Manchester United, the club was in chaos. They hadn't won the league in 19 years and had no systematic youth development and no long-term vision. Most new managers would have focused on immediate results. Ferguson did the opposite. His first major initiative wasn't buying expensive players. It was a focus on long-term success, creating what he called centers of excellence for youth development. Here's the story. Ferguson identified young players like David Beckham's, Ryan Giggs, and Gary Neville when they were teenagers. Instead of buying established stars, he invested years developing these kids into the core of his greatest teams. People criticized him for being too patient. The media called for his firing after poor early results. But Ferguson said, "I wanted to build right from the bottom." That was in order to create fluency and a continuity of supply to the first team. The result? That youth foundation became the spine of teams that won multiple championships and generated hundreds of millions in transfer value. Now, why does this matter for your leadership? Most leaders focus on immediate results at the expense of building sustainable systems. They hire experienced talent instead of developing internal capability. The tactical takeaway. Identify the foundational systems your organization needs to compete long-term. Then invest in building them, even when it delays short-term results. This is exactly what I see missing in most organizations. Leaders who optimize for quarterly performance rather than building systems that create sustained advantage. Ferguson understood that foundations built today become competitive advantages tomorrow. The key takeaway here: systems built today become advantages tomorrow. Principle 2. Master the cycle of renewal. Ferguson's most remarkable skill was knowing when to change a winning formula. He identified what he called 3 levels of players and systematically managed each group: veterans over 30, prime players aged 23 to 30, and developing players under 23. Here's the story. In the early 2000s, Ferguson had assembled 5 distinct league-winning squads. Instead of trying to keep successful teams together, he continuously sold players before they declined and promoted young talent to fill their roles. This is a common trait among the sports organizations that win continuously, knowing when to let go of talented but aging performers while developing younger talent to take their place. Ryan Giggs observed, "He's never really looking at the moment. He's always looking into the future, knowing what needs strengthening and what needs refreshing." Ferguson's approach was surgical. He'd sell a player who still had good years ahead of him because he could see the decline coming and knew he needed to plan ahead. The hardest decisions involved letting go of fan favorites who were still performing well. The result? Manchester United never had the typical cycle of success followed by decline. They maintained excellence for 26 years by constantly evolving. Now, why does this matter for your leadership? Most organizations either change too slowly and fall behind, or change too quickly and lose what made them successful. The tactical takeaway: avoid complacency in the face of success. Create systematic reviews of your team's life cycle. Identify who's in their prime, who's developing, and who needs to transition before decline becomes obvious. This is the difference between dynasties and one-hit wonders. The discipline to evolve when you're winning, not just when you're forced to change. Ferguson understood that in competitive environments, standing still means falling behind. The key takeaway here: evolve when winning, not when forced to change. Principle 3. Set uncompromising standards. Ferguson was famous for what players called the hairdryer treatment: intense, direct feedback when standards weren't met. But his genius wasn't just in being demanding. It was applying the standards universally, regardless of talent or status. And here's how Ferguson attacked problems. Ferguson once dropped his best player, Roy Keane, from a critical match because Keane criticized younger teammates in training. When Keane challenged Ferguson's authority publicly, Ferguson immediately terminated his contract. Ferguson said, "Everything we did was about maintaining the standards we had set as a football club. Even superstars with egos are not the problem some people may think. They need to be winners because that massages their ego." But here's the key insight. Ferguson didn't just demand technical excellence, he treated work ethic as a skill. He told players, working hard all your life is a talent. Even your best player has to show that he's prepared to work as hard as every other player. The result? Players understood that talent alone wasn't enough. The culture rewarded preparation, intensity, and commitment over reputation or past performance. Now, why does this matter for your leadership? Most leaders either have no clear standards or apply them inconsistently based on who's involved. The tactical takeaway: set high standards and attack problems. Define specific performance and behavioral standards, then apply them equally to everyone, especially your top performers. This is what I see in championship organizations. Leaders who understand that standards without universal application create resentment and mediocrity. Ferguson knew that protecting one player's ego destroys 10 others' motivation. The key takeaway here: standards without universal application create mediocrity. Principle 4. Psychological timing and control. Ferguson was a master of psychological leadership, knowing exactly when to be tough, when to encourage, and when to make difficult decisions. His approach was surgical. Address problems immediately, but match the message to the moment. Here's how this worked in practice. When Ferguson needed to give difficult feedback, he treated it as what he called a delicate assignment. He'd say, "Look, I might be making a mistake here, but I think this is the best for the team today." This approach preserved player confidence while still making necessary changes. He understood that criticism destroys most people, but encouragement builds them up. But when players became negative influences, Ferguson acted swiftly. He said, "I tended to act quickly when I saw a player become a negative influence. Some might say I acted impulsively, but I think that was critical that I made up my mind quickly." His philosophy was clear. Players must recognize that as the manager, you have the status to control events. You can complicate your life in many ways by asking, oh, I wonder if the players are going to like me. If I did my job well, the players would respect me, and that's all you need. The result? Ferguson maintained authority while preserving relationships, creating an environment where players respected him even when they disagreed with his decisions. Now, why does this matter for your leadership? Most leaders either avoid difficult conversations or handle them in ways that damage long-term relationships. The tactical takeaway: address problems immediately, but frame feedback to preserve dignity and confidence. Act quickly on negative influences before they spread. This is why sports provides such a powerful model for learning how to give and receive critical feedback in high-performance environments. Players expect direct feedback because results are immediately visible and competition is constant. There's no time for diplomatic delays that soften the message but slow improvement. This is the balance that separates great leaders from everyone else. Maintaining control while building people up, being decisive without being destructive. Ferguson mastered the psychology of authority. The key takeaway here: maintain authority while preserving relationships. Principle 5, Relentless Adaptation. Ferguson's greatest insight was that success can be your biggest enemy if it makes you complacent. Over 26 years, he completely rebuilt his approach multiple times while maintaining his core principles. Here's the story. In the mid-1990s, Ferguson became the first manager to use sports scientists, advanced medical facilities, and nutritional specialists. When other managers criticized him for being too scientific, he ignored them and continued innovating. Later, he adapted to foreign players entering English football, changing his tactics to match evolving styles of play, and even modified his communication approach as players' backgrounds diversified. Ferguson said, "Most people with my kind of track record don't look to change, but I always felt I couldn't afford not to change. We had to be successful. There was no other option for me." His philosophy was simple. "One of the things I've done well over the years is manage change," Ferguson said. "I believe that you control change by accepting it. That also means having confidence in the people you hire." The result, while other successful managers became outdated, Ferguson stayed ahead of trends and maintained relevance across 3 decades of dramatic change in football. This is what I love about Sir Alex Ferguson. Despite all of the success, he still didn't believe he knew it all or had all the answers. This is a common trait you see in the very best leaders in sports and in business. They avoid the complacency that often comes with success by eliminating their egos and admitting their mistakes. Now, why does this matter for your leadership? Most successful leaders become prisoners of their past success, unwilling to change what got them there. The tactical takeaway: evolve or die. Systematically challenge your successful methods. Ask what changes need to be made before your competition forces you to change. This is what separates dynasties from brief moments of excellence: the courage to evolve your winning approach before it becomes obsolete. Ferguson understood that in competitive environments, your greatest risk isn't failure. It's success that makes you stop improving. The key takeaway here: your greatest risk isn't failure. It's success that stops improvement. Now here's how all of these principles work together in practice. Look at Ferguson's masterpiece, the 26-year dynasty at Manchester United. This is psychological leadership operating at the highest level. Foundation building. Ferguson's youth system produced the core players for his greatest teams while generating massive transfer value. His long-term thinking created both competitive and financial advantages. You had the cycle of renewal. He rebuilt 5 championship-winning squads by systematically managing player life cycles. While other clubs tried to hold on to their aging stars, Ferguson stayed ahead of the decline curves. Uncompromising standards. Players like Cristiano Ronaldo and David Beckham became global superstars, but they all had to meet Ferguson's work ethic and behavioral standards first. Psychological control. Ferguson managed massive egos, handled media pressure, and made difficult personnel decisions while maintaining player respect and loyalty. Relentless adaptation. He evolved from traditional British football to modern global tactics, incorporated new training methods, and adapted his leadership style across different generations of players. Notice the complete integration. The foundation work identified adaptable players, the renewal cycle prevented complacency, the standards ensured consistent performance, the psychological mastery maintained control, and the adaptation kept everything current and avoided complacency. This is the difference between good leaders and legendary leaders. They create systems where every principle reinforces every other principle over extended periods. Some key ways you could implement this in your organization would look like building capabilities that compound over time, systematically refreshing talent before decline, applying standards universally, making sure that decisions are based on long-term organizational health, and continuously evolving your approach while maintaining your core values. And there you have it, Sir Alex Ferguson's leadership model broken down into 5 psychological principles: foundation building, cycle of renewal, uncompromising standards, psychological timing, and relentless adaptation. The bottom line, Ferguson didn't just win championships, he created a systematic approach to sustained excellence that combined long-term thinking with psychological mastery and continuous evolution. He proved that true leadership isn't about managing people, it's about creating environments where excellence becomes inevitable. Here's your homework. Pick one of these principles and apply it this month. If you're struggling with talent management, focus on the cycle of renewal. If your standards are inconsistent, start with universal application. I'll also just add that a lot of this information came from the Harvard Business Review article, Ferguson's Formula. I highly recommend checking it out if you want to keep learning about Sir Alex's leadership. And if you found this valuable, subscribe for more championship leadership case studies. Next week, we're breaking down Vince Lombardi and how he built excellence through teaching fundamentals instead of complex schemes. And if you're a business leader who wants to master the psychology of sustained excellence like Ferguson did, check out the link in the description. I work with executives who want to build dynasties, not just win once. Until next time, lead like a legend.